Hello, I'm Tillman, the only guy on the internet that doesn't know everything, and welcome to the Anniversary Show, where I celebrate an album that was released 10, 20, and 30 years ago. And today we're talking about The Idler Wheel is Wiser Than the Driver of the Screw, and Whipping Chords Will Serve You More Than Ropes Will Ever Do by Fiona Apple. This will be the only time you will hear me refer to the full title of that album, so I hope you enjoy that. While I have your attention, please don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Don't forget to check out my other shows, Never Heard It, where I talk about classic albums that I never got around to listening to, and It's Been a While, where I talk about albums that I loved as a kid, but for whatever reason I stopped listening to them. All right, let's talk about The Idler Wheel. So I've talked about everything on this channel from metal to pop to R&B, but it's pretty safe to say that I cover mostly hip hop. But before I move on, there's one thing that you need to know about me. I am a Fiona Apple super fan. There is no album in any genre that I listen to more intently than her debut album Tidal. So I'm going to see if I can get through this review without doing two things. I'm going to try not to ramble on and on about how much I love Fiona Apple. And two, I'm going to try not to cry. And I just had a wisdom tooth removed yesterday, so if the Percocet wears off in between me filming this, I might cry for a different reason. All right, let's get into it. The Idler Wheel was released in the UK on June 18, 2012, and one day later in the US, so if you're watching this in 2022, it is 10 years old. It is her fourth album after Extraordinary Machine that was released 7 years prior. Instead of using her long-term producer John Bryan, she opted for Charlie Drayton, her touring drummer and a well-established musician in his own right. She recorded this album in secret without the knowledge of her record label, and if you Google all the trouble she had with releasing Extraordinary Machine, you can probably understand why. She started working on this album in 2008 and finished in 2011, but her record label Epic was in the middle of firing their then president Amanda Ghost, and she didn't want to release it until they found a new one. And in case you're wondering, the new president they hired was L.A. Reid, who was replaced by Sylvia Rhone 3 years later. The album debuted at number 3 on Billboard's 200, which was her highest debut yet. This album, like all of her albums, received a Grammy nomination, and in 2020, Rolling Stone placed the album at 213 on the list of 500 greatest albums of all time. But before we talk about the album, let's see what else happened in June. Mariah Carey Unplugged was released on June 2nd, 1992. Pete Rock and CL Smooth's Mecca and the Soul Brothers was released on June 9th, 1992. Eric B. and Rakim's Don't Sweat the Technique was released on June 23rd, 1992. The Boomerang soundtrack was released on June 30th, 1992. And Joey Badass's 1999 was released on June 12th, 2012. The first song and single from this album is Every Single Night, a song that sums up pretty well what it's like to be a person with high anxiety, or more specifically, what it's like to be Fiona Apple. A person that thinks too much and second guesses their decisions, a person that finds it hard to sleep at night because they can't turn off their brain, but also a person that has come to grips with all of this and accepts this about themselves. Fiona is famous for her verbose and grandiose lyrics, but the chorus on this song may be the greatest distillation of her emotions she's ever written. I just want to feel everything. Fun fact, the original version of Panic at the Disco's Miss Jackson sampled this song, and if you're listening to the finished version, it's not hard to tell. Next is Daredevil, a song about being in love with extremes, which continues the theme of wanting to experience everything that she can. All she wants in a partner is someone who can keep her from burning everything down. The key lyric on this one is, "Give me anything and I'll turn it into a gift." Throughout this album, you can hear Fiona and Charlie experimenting with different percussive sounds and field recordings. For instance, the percussive sound you hear throughout this song is the sound of Charlie slapping his thighs. It's in this way that this album feels like a precursor to Fetch the Bolt Cutters, an album that will come an agonizing 8 years later. Valentine was first played at Largo on Valentine's Day in 2007. She said that this song isn't about a man or a lover, but about a girl she saw dancing and she admired her openness. She wished she could have joined her, but she got lost in the learning curve. This review is just going to be me quoting Fiona Apple lyrics, so I hope you're prepared for that. Jonathan is about her ex-boyfriend Jonathan Ames, and again, it's a song about watching someone live their lives and admiring them for it. The noises you hear throughout the song are the songs of the machines at a bottle factory that her and Charlie were walking by one night. One of the workers let them in with their recorders, and they recorded extra textures for this song. Left Alone was the first song written for this album. In fact, the phrase "Orotund Mutt" and "Moribund Slut" were the first phrases she wrote for the album. It begins with an almost Art Blakey sounding drum solo that I assume was played by Charlie. It's the most purposely dramatic song so far on the album, but with the minimalist production, it sounds darker than it would in someone else's hands. And it's a song about the classic introvert's paradox. How can I ask anyone to love me when all I want to do is be left alone? On Werewolf, she makes comparisons to her and her partner as two things that will never get along, like a werewolf and a full moon, or a wishing well and a bolt of electricity. But she admits that there's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with a song ending in a minor key, and the song, in case you're wondering, is in A minor. The first half of this album does have moments of anger and hurt, but mostly coupled with acceptance. But the first two songs that kick off the second half are just angry and don't leave a lot of room for forgiveness. On Periphery, she falls for a guy that seems to like to be on the periphery of modern life, only to find out that what he really wanted all along was to get married and start a family in the suburbs. The line, "I don't appreciate people who don't appreciate," seems like she means she doesn't like people who don't get better with time, and this guy seems to only get more boring. With lines like, "You let me down, I don't even like you anymore," her rejection of him seems purposefully childish, and I love it. On the next song, Regret, she gets even more straightforward. "I ran out of white dove feathers to soak up the hot piss that comes from your mouth every time you address me." Yeah. She makes a complete 180 on Anything We Want, which is one of the most flirtatious songs she's ever written. The song starts out almost comically Victorian with her blushing and resting a fan on her forehead. By the second verse, she can no longer contain her excitement and says that "I look like a neon zebra shaking rain off its stripes." Now close your eyes and imagine a neon zebra shaking rain off its stripes. God, I love her so much. Okay, on June 18th, the night of her album release, she performed this song on Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. And that date is special because it's also Paul McCartney's birthday. And because of that, she also sung the song Let Me Roll It from the 1973 Wings album Band on the Run. This performance is the sole reason I got more interested in Paul McCartney's solo work, and it made me the Paul McCartney fan that I am today. The album ends with Hot Night featuring dueling vocals from her sister Maud Margot, with Fiona playing the timpani. According to an interview with New York Magazine, she said that the roots of the song lay in a Bach concert that she had seen in New York and the Supremes tune Where Did Our Love Go? I don't really see the connection. To me, it sounds like Native American war drums, but what do I know? So let's talk about the album title. The first line, "The idler wheel is wiser than the driver of the screw," conveys the idea that it's wiser to be in the middle and affect many things and have many things have an effect on you than it is to just be one thing and only have one task. This sentiment rings all throughout the album with this idea of wanting to feel everything. But what about the second line? "Whipping cords will serve you more than ropes will ever do." In case you don't know, whipping cords are used to wrap the ends of rope to keep them from unraveling. So in a sense, they may be more important than the ropes themselves. She said in a Pitchfork interview that if given the choice, she would rather teach somebody how to get out of trouble than how to avoid it. Fiona Apple taught me that sometimes it's okay to not be okay, and more importantly, that being emotional doesn't mean you're being weak. Since her debut in 1996, she still puts as much passion in every word as she did when she was a teenager, and I can only hope to be as passionate as that in my everyday life. So happy anniversary to the Idler Wheel, and catch me next time while I talk about Channel Orange by Frank Ocean. This is Free Tillman, the only guy on the internet that doesn't know everything. Peace.